This is the story of Ali Kimara. Ali is 13 years old. Ali loves football. His favorite team is Yanga. And in his pastime, Ali loves playing the PlayStation. Ali has big dreams. He wants to be a medical doctor. And he is working on that dream because as of now, this very year, Ali completed his grade 7. He's completed his primary school with flying colors. However, Ali suffers from a very rare neuromuscular condition. Even after consultation with international and local doctors, we still do not know the exact diagnosis of his problem. We still do not know how best can we ensure that he gets the right kind of treatment. To add to that misery, Ali had a sister, Nasrin. But unfortunately, Nasrin couldn't make it. She had the same problem as Ali. And she passed away before the age of 5. Now, think of Ali's parents, especially the mother. If you are a mother of 2 children, the only 2 children that you have, one passed away and one is suffering from a rare neuromuscular condition that you don't even understand. It's still a mystery. Scientists have performed genetic tests. They've discussed these cases in international conferences and they still don't know what's wrong with him. Can you imagine the despair that such people would face? Can you imagine how broken they must feel? Can you imagine how painful their story is? But I'm not here to tell you or discuss with you the problem about the fact that we were not able to diagnose this boy. I'm here to tell you that this mother, Sharifa, and her son have converted their problem by creating an opportunity for others in Tanzania, by making it a national movement of advocacy for rare diseases and genetic conditions in Tanzania. And that is what the story is about. Ali's life has not only changed his family, it also has changed mine. It also has changed how I am leading into life, what I am doing currently. It was in the year 2019 when I had completed my PhD in medical genetics from the Netherlands. I decided that I want to come back home. I had understood very well that the field of human genetics has a lot of potential because where the field is going, we are going to be needing genetic information to drive how we are discovering drugs, to drive how we are diagnosing our patients. And so I came with this unreal energy that I wanted to drive change in my country that I love so much. I want to train the next generation of scientists. I want to do research. I want to help my patients. I wanted to make sure human genetics is something that is recognized in the medical fraternity in our country. And then they say, when fate wants something, it just happens. So I came across a group of like-minded people and we together co-founded a premier genetic society in Tanzania. And while we were doing that, in our first inaugural meeting, we approached the late Dr. Faustin Dugulile in the center to be the chief guest of that meeting. This is 2019. When we met him, like I said, fate had it. He was the one who introduced me to Sharifa. Because Sharifa at that time was looking for answers for her son. She was looking for scientists, medical researchers to tell her what is really wrong, how can we help. On the other hand, when we were premiering that society, we were looking for motivation, purpose, inspiration to understand the realities of patients in the country. Because if you were the mother or father of such children, majority of the time, you want to hide them in the houses. Children with disabilities, children with special needs, children with malformations, children with rare diseases are often stigmatized in our communities and are being forced to stay inside because, oh, what is the community going to say? But here I have someone who's brave enough not only to fight her problems, but ready and willing to come out in the open and talk about this so that the next child who's suffering from this doesn't have to go through that. Now, let me tell you exactly in the next couple of minutes, what is it, this problem that we are trying to fix? When I sat down with Sharifa, what is it that we were really trying to address? This picture represents this tiny molecule called DNA, or in Swahili we say vinasaba, right? Each of us has trillions of cells in our body, and each of those cells has this nucleus which has this tiny molecule. Now think of this tiny molecule as your instruction book or your recipe book. Today, when you want to reciprocate a dish that's of a quality of a master chef, when you really want to feel that deliciousness of that food, you are going to follow a very strict recipe. And that recipe will determine whether you will get the outcome that you want or not, and how well you stick to it. In the same way, the DNA molecule has the recipe of how human beings function. Whether you will be tall or short, whether you will have long hair or curly hair, whether your eyes are going to be brown or blue or black, whether you are going to respond to a certain drugs differently from other people, whether you are not going to respond to drugs, whether you are predisposed to cancer, everything is determined by this molecule DNA because it has the code of life. Now, this particular molecule is a very important aspect of what I'm about to tell you. This particular molecule is made up of 4 main letters. Think of those as your recipe booklets. Collectively, we've got 3.4 billion letters that make up the DNA of one person. For those of you who still don't understand what I'm saying, think of it this way. You bring in 127 books, each book of 1,000 pages, and you only write these 4 letters into this entire 127 books. That's the amount of information of one person's DNA. One person's DNA. All right? And that DNA, that sequence, those letters, that arrangement will tell you how your body functions and how you respond to things. However, think of it this way. Sometimes recipes go wrong. Unfortunately, when someone tells you, instead of adding sugar, add salt, what happens to the dish? If the dish is supposed to be a sweet dish, it now suddenly becomes a salty dish, and then you failed your deliciousness. In the same way, there are changes that can happen in the way these letters are organized in our DNA. Sometimes these letters come in, sometimes these letters come out, sometimes these letters are substituted. All these changes, they change the subsequent reaction to the body. And they can cause different genetic conditions. They can cause problems to the body. Now, scientists in the 1990s understood that that was extremely important, that we understand the knowledge of how these letters, how the code of life, how this instruction manual, how this book should look like. And so they come up with this big biological project that costed almost $3 billion. I'm talking of 1990. The idea was very simple. We've got 3.4 billion letters. Let's get them and create them into a database. Why? Because if you want to understand where the changes are happening, you have to compare it with a normal person's DNA, isn't it? When you compare a normal person's DNA and a diseased person's DNA, is when you will be able to know exactly where the letters are changing. And if those letters that have changed are actually causing the disease or not. That was the simple idea. However, downstream, much later we come to find out that the very instruction manual that we thought we got from the Human Genome Project was in fact not representative of populations from Africa. Because just like any other recipe, African recipe was different. When you go to India and you want to cook Indian food, there will be a different recipe. The same dish, when you come to Zanzibar and you want to cook it, there will be a different recipe. And the same way, these DNA sequences, the letters that make up this instruction manual of human beings, are different between different populations. Now, because the Human Genome Project predominantly captured this DNA information from a European ancestry person, that information was not representing the African population. And that has two consequences, negative. Number one, I can now no longer use this project to help my patients who are from African ancestry to get the right kind of diagnosis. Children like Ali Kimara are not benefiting from these diagnoses is predominantly because of that. And if I'm not able to provide you with the right diagnosis, how in the hell am I going to be able to provide you with the right kind of treatment? It's impossible. So, what can you do? Sometimes you have to understand the crux of the problem. There was an audit that was done by looking at all the genetic studies in the world to understand how much data is actually present in that database and which populations do they represent. The audit that happened in 2016 showed that about 81% of the data was representing European populations. Only 3% was representing Africans. After 3 years, in 2019, that number shot down to 2%, and in 2022, that number went down to 1.1%. The problem is only getting worse. This code, this instruction manual that is supposed to represent African populations is getting smaller and smaller, meaning the problem, the negative consequences are getting bigger and bigger. What are we supposed to do about that? So this is where we decided to flip the script and see beyond the horizon. Because if we really want to ensure that people like Ali Kimara and thousands of children like him who have this rare condition, we don't want to see them that they are statistically left aside. Because when you leave out a child and get them out of the statistics, meaning you are not able to provide them with answers, that is the largest injustice you can do to a child. So we took matters into our hands. We didn't have any multi-billion dollars. We didn't have any high-tech, high-flyer labs. But we had the courage, we had the motivation, we had the right people, and we had the determination to make a difference. That is where we started to premiere the Genetic Society, this Premier Genetic Society in Tanzania. And the idea was very simple. If we really holistically want to solve a problem of this kind, of this stature, of this gravity, we have to dissect it from different angles. We had already started engaging with Sharifa and Ali Kimara and other patient organizations to understand that advocacy was very important. You need to speak to the layman, you need to speak to a politician, you need to speak to a healthcare workers, you need to speak to your family. So advocacy is very important. When we were speaking to the patients, we realized another thing. When the patients were going to the hospital, the medical doctors and nurses that were receiving them did not have the skill set to identify a rare genetic condition because there was no training. That gave birth to our training component. Everything was happening naturally and step by step. When you have started training people, suddenly you will start getting more patients. It opened up our diagnostic arm because now patients were coming in. When you open the diagnostic arm, you will also have to open the therapeutics arm. And when you have all these arms working together, And of course, us being professional scientists, research was a no-brainer. We had to go for the research. So to give you context, and getting back to Ali Kimara's condition, as I said, it's a rare genetic condition. But one might ask, what exactly is a rare disease? And what does it mean? So rare disease, by definition, is one person being affected by a condition out of 2,000 people. Now, individually, if you look at rare diseases individually, you'll be like, well, these are very rare and very small numbers. But as of now, we have recognized over 7,000 different rare diseases. And collectively around the world, rare disease patients are almost 300 million people. The sad reality is a lot of them are children, and a lot of them die before the age of 5. And most importantly, and why is this connected to genetics? 80% of rare diseases occur because those letters in the DNA, that instruction manual, has changed. And that change is causing them to suffer. Now here we are, looking at Ali Kimara's situation and asking ourselves, how can we really use his case and help the thousands of other children in Tanzania? So we started off with training and the social media to make sure that their voices were heard. And lo and behold, guess what happened? We sought attention from the leadership of the country. Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan attended our event. And I can tell you, in the year 2021, for the fiscal budget of the Ministry of Health for 2021, for the first time in the history of Tanzania, there was a budget that was set aside for patients with rare diseases. But we didn't stop there. Because yes, we wanted recognition from the government, I get it. We wanted them to provide education for rare disease children, I get it. But that's not the end. We wanted to build infrastructure in Tanzania so that the tests are done here. We wanted to build infrastructure in Tanzania so that the hospitals are capable to treat our patients. We wanted to build infrastructure in Tanzania so that our universities are teaching health professionals on how to appropriately diagnose these patients. So we sought extra support through international collaborations. We teamed up with patient advocacy groups, and we approached international partners in Korea through our foreign ministry. And we ensured that we got 100 million Tanzanian shillings for research from those foundations. And we managed to also get free genetic testing for rare disease patients in Tanzania. This is the path that we have now taken. But the problem is much bigger than Tanzania. The problem is much bigger than just our country. As I said, it's an African problem. Africans are not well represented in these global genetic studies. And therefore, there are consequences to these things. Africa is a continent of 1.4 billion people. It's a continent of 54 countries. 3,000 languages are being spoken in the continent. And what we know so far is that 50% of the population in Africa are children. And if we listen to our statisticians, they are telling us that by 2040, 40% of the world's population will be in Africa. So if we don't take things seriously now, if we don't take matters into our own hands now, then we are not doing justice to that 40% of the children that will be living and residing in our beloved continent. And so this is a responsibility for all of us. And one might ask, well, okay, what's my role? What am I supposed to do? You are a scientist, you are a doctor, okay, what am I supposed to do? If you are a teacher, then ensure that you are desensitizing and educating your children about disabilities, special needs, genetic conditions in your classrooms. If you're a mother or a father, if you're a parent, make sure that you teach your children to ask, how can I help you, rather than what's wrong with him. If you're a journalist, Make sure you use your platform to break the stigma and the stereotypes that attach to these kind of children. If you're a policymaker, listen to the voices of the patients. Understand what the country requires to build the ecosystem in the country to help these children. And if you're none of that, no problem. You can be none, no problem. Start with the basic act of humanity. Start to care. Because when you care, that's the first step towards recognition of the problem. That's what you can do. Ladies and gentlemen, please join the genomics revolution now. Thank you.